Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We're positively getting into the Thanksgiving week, which is also crab cake week. It's a great week to ship crab cakes from any of our sponsors. They all do it. They all make it affordable. It's all delicious. They give you directions on how to get them. We're going to be at Pappas on Tuesday. We're going to be doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour presented by the Maryland Lottery. I had a $2 winner the other day over at Costas. I had a gentleman who was a veteran, older gentleman, came up, thanked me for the ticket. He didn't even win. He said it was just thought that counted. And I thought, well, that's nice. So remember that for the rest of the holiday season, everyone. Win donation, 866-90-NATION. You buy two, you get two free. 0% financing. That's for 5 years if you buy now through the holidays. And Jiffy Lube Multicare putting us on the road. So let me give you the crab cake schedule, and then Luke and I are going to talk some defense. We're going to talk about having some downtime here and going out to L.A., we're at Pappas and Parkville on Thursday, and then after Thanksgiving, no leftovers for me. I'm going fresh, man. Wednesday, we're going to be at Coco's. I might even have a burger. That's the 29th. Thursday, the 30th, we're going to be at Gertrude's. I'm definitely having the crab cake there over at the BMA with Dan Rodricks. That's going to be a big day. Odette Ramos, Councilwoman's going to join us. On Friday, December the 1st, we're going to be in Perryville up at the Hollywood Casino from like 1 until 5. Going to get there early. Tom Kelso is going to do a stadium information for dummies. Former Maryland Stadium Authority chairman who was no dummy, 8 years of running it. And John Angelos is trying to have it done away with. The oversight of the stadiums done away with for John Angelos and another $300-400 million in money. So it's crazy. It's all coming down the pike. I don't want to say that Governor Westmore is running for me, but he's not running toward me right now to discuss this. So we're going to be into December as well. So December 5th, we're going to be at State Fair. Late December, we're going to be at Fadley's. And on the 15th, we're going to be over at Far and Dotter at Curio. I toured the cannabis facility, production, soup to nuts, where a gummy comes from, how it helps you, the science, the plant, all of that. I did all of that. We're with our friends at Curio. On the 15th, we're going to have a crab cake. It's a mystery crab cake because I got to check back with one of my favorite crab cakes that I ever had that I only had once, and it's not a sponsor. It was a little joint. I did it 2.5 years ago, so I'm trying to bring back the really good crab cakes because guys like Luke will say, hey, where do I get a good crab cake? And I'm like, hey, Tuesday, you got the week off. Come on over to Pappas and Parkville. This is a good time for rest, for getting right. We've discussed Mark Andrews. We've discussed Lamar's ankle. We haven't talked a lot about the defense, and I guess on the backside of Joe Burrow going out, and we learned who Jake Browning was. I thought it was funny that his name is Browning, and Browning is the verb we use anytime Cleveland shows up, right? So I thought that was, I didn't even make a joke about that. And then I put the wrong meme up for Nick Nolte instead of Chris Christopherson. I kind of screwed that up. But that wide receiver from the Bengals with the long hair, shaggy looking dude. He really did remind me of North Dallas 40 and semi-tough. But the defense, brought enough of a lunch pail, against the backup quarterback that the defense is still the big story that not everybody, I don't say we don't talk about it. We talk about it a lot. We're talking about it last this week after the Andrews injury, and they put 34 points up, and Lamar and who's Odell and all of that. But the defense is still, if they go to the Super Bowl, we'll talk about Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. It's going to be because of the defense, and the defense is going to take the ball away at some point.
Well, Lamar Jackson's also an MVP candidate, but I agree with you. I don't have a whole lot to say about the defensive performance. I'd love to sit here and give them their flat. I mean, they faced Jake Browning. For me, I look at the 4 drives that Joe Burrow played: field goal, 3 and out, missed field goal, and then of course the 82-yard touchdown drive that finished with Burrow throwing the touchdown to Joe Mixon, and you could see that he was the wrist was bad. I'll say this much, and look, this is a outstanding defense. I want to be very clear about that. I think the last 2 weeks we've pumped the brakes a little bit on some of the historical comparisons to 2000 and the Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Terrell Suggs. Go back to even Rod Woodson, that era of Ravens.
They also
defense.
played 2 division games in 4 days too, right? Like and a lot of snaps, a whole lot of snaps on their own because they stayed on the field too long last week.
Sure, and look, I'm just saying, we just pumped the brakes on that part of it. It still very well could be the best defense in the NFL. When it's all said and done, they did exactly what I would expect them to do when Jake Browning comes into the game. You made mention of the Browning to his credit, he wasn't reckless with the football. He didn't, turn the ball over, all of that, but he was very limited. They were very limited in what they could do. If Joe Burrow never leaves the game, what happens? I have no idea, but they were able to move the ball on this Ravens defense. And I will say this, and I won't hedge on this. I mean, because, the Joe Burrow thing, it's an unknown. We have no idea. Ravens might have shut him down from that point on for all we know. But they do need to clean up the run defense a little bit. You've talked a lot about the running game, the rush offense. I want to talk a little bit about the run defense. That, to me, if there's an element to this Ravens defense that has not been as dominant as getting to the quarterback, bringing quarterbacks down, how they've played on the back end of the defense, even with Marlon Humphrey missing time and Marcus Williams missing time. And we've talked about Geno Stone and what he's done from an interception standpoint. They need to tighten up the run defense a little bit, because Joe Mixon was able to run the ball against them. Now, second half, that changed, because obviously you're going to adjust how you're playing defense when Jake Browning is the quarterback compared to Joe Burrow. So, but if there's something about the defense that I think, and look, the players know this too. They're not thrilled by this either. They want to tighten up the screws on the run defense a little bit. Thought it was interesting, lost in everything that happened. And I'm not saying this is a major headline, but how about the fact that Broderick Washington, who they gave a contract extension to back in August, and he was coming off of a really rock solid 2022 season, he was a healthy scratch on Thursday night. I think that did have something to do with the matchup and what kind of game the Ravens thought it was going to be, probably thinking the ball is going to be in Joe Burrow's hands a lot. But Broderick Washington has not had a great year. It's been very quiet, especially for someone they gave a contract extension to. So that was interesting to see that. So, if there's, again, this is relative. They don't have
Marcus
a bad
Williams even appeared on Thursday night.
Yeah.
We called his name at one point, right?
Sure. I mean, Kyle Hamilton is playing at a Pro Bowl level. I mean, he's been fantastic. Maybe wasn't the best of games, for their inside linebackers, especially early on. But if there's a relative, I don't even want to say it's a weakness, because it's not a bad run defense by any stretch of the imagination. That would be hyperbole. But if there's something that I would like to see them tighten up a little bit, it would be their run defense the last couple weeks. But as you pointed out, it's a division opponent, short week. They played a lot, played a lot of snaps against Cleveland on Sunday. So, I'll totally buy that being a factor, but it is something in their losses, at times where their defense hasn't played as well. Even the Arizona game where, they gave up, they gave up some points in the fourth quarter and made that game interesting. Arizona was able to run the ball on them. So that is something that I think they do want to get a little better with, as they get deeper into the season. In the same way we talked about the importance of the Ravens run game, the importance of stopping the run as the elements get worse late in the season. It gets cold and the weather is not as cooperative and conducive to passing games. So, that's really all I have in terms of looking at it from a global standpoint. As far as individual performances, I'd be remiss, and I mentioned this on Twitter, and I mentioned this, I even cited Next Gen Stats. How about Odafe Owe? Another sack. He's had a sack in 4 of his 5 games since coming back. I mean, going into this season, it was premature to label him a bust, but it would be hard to not look at him as a first-round pick 2 years in and not have some concerns about where he was from a development standpoint. He gets hurt in week 2, missed about a month, and since coming back, I mean, we've talked plenty about Clowney and Kyle Van Noy and the huge impact that they've made and how huge it was for them to add those guys, considering the injuries to Owe and Ajabo. But Owe's played really well since coming back, and I think he was credited with 6 or 7 pressures by Next Gen Stats. I mean, he was very disruptive in the pocket. So when you kind of look at how their pass rush is shaping up, we've talked about the collective effort and all this, the simulated pressures and stunts and blitzing and all the different things that Mike McDonald does from a schematic standpoint. But when you look at their top 3 edge guys with Clowney, Van Noy, Owe, and then obviously Justin Madubuike with another sack on Thursday night, that's a pretty good foursome there.
It's real production. It is.
Yeah. So
it's not one guy. It's not J.J. Watt or,
right.
He's got 18 sacks and nobody else has 4. It's coming from all levels. And to your point, when they're going to blitz Stone or they're going to blitz Hamilton or they're going to blitz Humphrey, whoever it is, the whole golf bag's involved, right? Literally, the
Yeah,
whole tool chest.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've had good individual efforts. I mean, Clowney's easily playing his best football in a few years at the very least. You know, Kyle Van Noy, little bit of a renaissance here from a pass rushing standpoint. As I mentioned, Owe really looks like he's taken a big step forward, you know, now that he's back healthy and contributing. But Matabike's got what, 9.5 sacks now? I mean, I was thinking about this. I was
He's an
talking about this
$80 million
early.
football player, right? Like literally, right?
I mean, you think about it, Nestor. I mean, who have the Ravens had that lined up inside consistently? Trevor Price was an outside inside kind of guy, and obviously he had the huge first year with the Ravens when they signed him in 06, you know, coming over from Denver. But who has been that guy that's been an interior pass rusher for them that's put up these kind of numbers and been as disruptive as Matabike has been? I mean, it's tough when you start to
Sam
think about, I mean,
Adams,
look,
Goose back in the day,
but
but this is even more so.
but they weren't getting sacks though. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like
they didn't
this
need
is
to in that defense,
well,
but
but but
yes.
but they were different types of players, right? I
Yeah.
mean, they were space occupiers to clear the way for Ray Lewis to make tackles and Jamie Sharper to make tackles. So different mindset. But you look at what Matabike has done, and I think for as much as we've talked about the collective effort, I do think the impact that Matabike, and I'll also throw Michael Pierce in there. He doesn't have these big sack totals, but he has been very disruptive from a pressure standpoint when they've asked him to rush the passer, which he's done a little bit more of that than he's had in the past. But when you're getting interior pressure in this day and age, we talk so much, whether we're talking about Burrow, you know, we talked about this for years with Tom Brady. The ball comes out so quick. You know, so many of the top quarterbacks, they get rid of the ball very quickly. So even if you have really good edge rushers, there are times where they're not going to get there because the ball's coming out. So when you have someone that can pressure and move a quarterback's feet from the interior, the way that Matabike and to a lesser degree, but also Michael Pierce has done for them of lining up at the defensive tackle spots, that's a different element to their pass defense and their pass rush that they have not had very often. I mean, you know, Haloti Nada had a couple years where, you know, what, 5 sacks maybe, you know, something along those lines. I mean, you know, they've had a few guys here and there that were okay doing that, but what they're getting from Matabike and then couple that with what they're getting from their edge players, I mean, it's a really, really formidable pass rush. And I will give them full credit because, and it wasn't just you and me, everyone was talking about where's the pass rush going to come from? I mean, that was a significant question for this team. And if someone had told you before the season that Ajabo would get hurt and would be a total non-factor, and Owe would miss a month. Now, Owe's played really well when he's been out there, but
And
he
Tyus
would miss
Bowser,
a
throw him in
month.
there too, right? He was another name we talked about,
And
right?
yeah, Tyus Bowser, and another guy, not a big, you know, not a huge pass rush guy, but certainly a guy who's gotten some sacks for them the last couple of years when he's been on the field. Yeah, if someone had told you that, you're probably thinking this pass rush is a liability, and instead it's been a massive strength. I mean, they lead the NFL in sacks. I mean, what else is there to say about that? So it's really been big for them. Like I said, if I have one, I don't even know if I'd say concern. It's more constructive criticism of the defense. Do you think they need to tighten up, you know, their run defense a little bit? But beyond that, I mean, you feel really good about this group. The good news was, you know, the initial scare with Marlon Humphrey last Sunday, you know, thinking it might be an Achilles, it's a calf. You know, even if he misses the Chargers game, I don't expect him to miss much time beyond that. Around, I don't think it's something he's going to be out long term. But even without him, you know, and we even saw on Thursday night they had to pivot a little bit. Rock Yassin struggled, you know, a bad pass interference penalty. So, but Ronald Darby, we saw him make some nice plays, and he hadn't even been playing in recent weeks. He hadn't played at all on defense the last few games, so he played well. And they even got Jalen Armour Davis in the mix. And kudos to Brandon Stevens. He gave up the garbage time touchdown at the very end, but he was tasked with traveling for good stretches of that game with Jamar Chase. I mean, he wasn't on him exclusively, but he was on Chase a lot. And even with, yes, Jake Browning at quarterback, Jamar Chase is still capable of wrecking a game. And Brandon Stevens, again, another one of those stories for this defense. I mean, you could talk about the high price guys, you can talk about the high profile guys, but they have just had so many guys step up on the defensive side of the football. And it really is one of those groups where, okay, Roquan Smith, $20 million inside linebacker, Pro Bowl player. Marlon Humphrey, $20 million cornerback, Pro Bowl player. Marcus Williams, high profile free agent, even though he's missed a lot of time. But go down the list of the number of guys that we weren't even talking about during training camp who have made such meaningful contributions for their defense. And, not even talking Thursday night, just in general, what they've gotten. And, you look at their defense, I mean, it runs 17, 18, 19 deep in terms of guys that you get out there and they're not just part of the rotation. You feel good about them playing. You feel good about them being out on the field when they're called upon. And, even some of their best defenses, whether you're talking about the Wink years or Dean Pease or go back to Rex Ryan, all the way back to the days of Marvin Lewis, there were guys that you had to put on the field that you'd be a little nervous about, at least a couple. But you look at this defense, like I said, other than maybe Broderick Washington, who was a healthy scratch on Thursday night, and we'll see how that plays out here moving forward. I don't expect him to be buried, but, other than him, who would you really look at on this defense and say hasn't had a good year? I mean, other than guys have been injured and just haven't been out there, it really has been just such an impressive effort collectively. And it's a credit to the coaching, credit to the front office, and very much a credit to these players for everyone playing such good team defense and selfless defense, as we've talked about specifically with that pass rush.
You mentioned all the money, but they used a first-round pick on Patrick Queen and had to go out and sort of replace him, and he's playing to the value of first-round pick now as best he can, at the position he's at. Kyle Hamilton as well, and you mentioned Matabike and, how they've drafted and how they've gotten guys on the field. And even when a Bowser doesn't work out or an Ajabo, who they used a real draft pick on him as well, and believing that by now he would be healthy and performing. I mean, so much so that Kyle Van Noy kind of is a result of him not being that, right? At this point, they've seen contributions in a lot of different ways. Luke Jones is here. He's Baltimore Luke. He will be out in Owings Mills when they give him an opportunity next week. They're taking some time off, going out to LA. This part of the schedule, and the one thing about sacks, I want to go back to that because I don't want to be interrupted, but you mentioned leading the league in sacks. The one way you lead the league in sacks is being up 24-3 in the fourth quarter and the other team having to throw the ball. You wind up getting 2, 3, 4 sacks late in the game because the team's coming back. Burying teams early was a theme in 19 and doing all that. They have a lot of time off here. This Andrews thing is going to be in everybody's head until it's not, right? Until likely Kohler, until they go out and win without him and show productivity in the passing game to show up for whatever he would be there for, which is pretty much every third down. Every third down, 89's the first guy you're looking for. And if they make anything happen with Flowers, it's because 89's getting double teamed. So that won't be the case anymore. So it'll be interesting to see where defenses put that thing for them. But this time off is something we're going to have plenty of time to talk about it. But this time off, Harbaugh knew all of this all along. They got Lamar upright. It's not dreamy, right? I mean, with Humphrey and certainly with Andrews now and Ronnie Stanley, the problems that they've had. But dude, they're 8-3.
Yeah.
Nobody's coming to catch them. We're watching the Steelers-Browns game on Sunday now, and I don't think either one of them is very good. Now, that's not saying the Browns did beat the Ravens. The Steelers can beat the Ravens in a month, but I don't think that those teams are counting to 11 or 12 to where the Ravens are already at 8, right? So this is really about adding up whether they're going to be 11, 12, 13 wins, where they're going to be in seeding. But they have I don't say favorable schedule because they play tough games, but they have this is doable. From a scheduling standpoint, now that you've been through these 2 Thursdays, you've been to London, you've had your awful injury. Now you got time, you got health, you got Buffalo fading, you got Cincinnati faded. Maybe less of that. Who are we going to play in January, and how are we going to beat 3 of them? The Chiefs don't even look that great. I mean, I don't look at any of these teams and say the Ravens. San Francisco in any given week, Philadelphia in any given week. We'll see Philadelphia and Kansas City play this week as well. And that's all power ranking nonsense. I'm looking at this globally and saying, where are they going to be on January 10th? And how are they going to get there? And what kind of position are they going to be in? They're not going to have Mark Andrews, and they're not going to have an elite version of Ronnie Stanley, even if they have such a thing.
Yeah, I mean, They have some question marks. I mean, every team, to the point that you just made, every team does. I mean, look, Kansas City's going to be the team to beat until someone beats them. I mean, that's just how it is when you've won 2 Super Bowls over the last 4 years. You've earned that. You've earned that title. And while I would agree with you, their offense hasn't looked as good, and specifically they've had their issues at wide receiver. That's a better Kansas City defense than they've had at any point during this Patrick Mahomes era. So acknowledging that, you look at the rest of this field at this point in time. Are the Bills going to get off the mat and even make the playoffs? Are the Bengals going to get off the mat and even make the playoffs? Jacksonville, I think people were starting to feel them until they got blown out by San Francisco this past week. So the Jaguars are an interesting team, but certainly not a team that the Ravens or Kansas City are fearing at this point in time. So it is wide open, and the Ravens should feel really good about this. One point I want to make, because I brought this up talking about this with Dennis, leading into Thursday night's game, and maybe even a little bit of evidence of that early in the game, before Burrow went out. But I think it's going to be important for this team to get some rest. I mean, they had the London trip. They've had, they're going to have another West Coast trip here before the bye. I thought what we saw on Sunday against Cleveland, especially late in the game with the missed tackling, which was not something that they've done a whole lot of this year. To me, that was some evidence of a team that I think showing some fatigue. I do think this is a tired football team right now, and that's a credit to how they played on Thursday night, getting the win, even with that. So I think these next 3 weeks for a Jadeveon Clowney, for a Kyle Van Noy, for someone like Marcus Williams, who's been playing with a pec injury, and we've talked a lot about his tackling, but he made some plays, as you
How about
pointed out.
Seidler and some of these guys that have been on the line? Morgan Moses trying to get him.
Sure. I mean, I was focusing on the defense, but you're right. I mean, it applies to both sides of the ball, especially for these veteran players or anyone that's been battling through an injury. I think this is going to be such a big time for them to rest up. I mean, Andrews is done, right? Dobbins is done. Who knows what's going to happen with Tyus Bowser? We'll see what Ronnie Stanley looks like whenever he gets back on the field. Which I expect
Beckham looked like a $16 million wide receiver for a couple minutes.
He looked more. The last couple of weeks he has looked more like that. So the challenge is keeping him looking like that. And again, these next 3 weeks where, hey, you got to take care of business against the Chargers. They've got a heck of a quarterback in Justin Herbert, and that's an offense that at times, they've really put up some points, although they've been typical Chargers, inconsistent. They look good one week and they look terrible the next week. That's been their MO for years now. But this is really a golden opportunity for them to get right, get some rest, get themselves refreshed, because as you pointed out, I mean, it is a difficult final they come out, play the Rams, great. Playing at home, that game you feel great, really good about. But after that, I mean, those final 4 games, I mean, that's no joke. At Jacksonville for Sunday Night Football, that crowd is going to be as amped up as a Jacksonville crowd can be. And then at San Francisco, the 49ers, some people were a little too quick to talk about their demise, when they were banged up here in recent weeks. And then home against Miami, home against Pittsburgh. I mean, they better be ready, because that's going to be a very difficult final 4 games. And I don't think that those final 4 games are going to be pivotal to their playoff chances as much as trying to see if you can be the number 1 seed, to see if you can be that team that gets that first round bye. And if they do that, they're going to have to win, because Kansas City's remaining schedule compared to the Ravens' remaining schedule, it's a little more favorable, even with the Chiefs playing the Eagles, for this, this Monday Night Football clash. So, they're going to have to keep winning. And I think they have the horses to do it, even with acknowledging how crummy it is to lose Mark Andrews and how big that is to lose him. But they still have a lot of talented football players, and there's still so many things to like about this football team. So a lot of work left to do, but you look at this division now, no Deshaun Watson. Who knows what's going to happen with Joe Burrow? And the Bengals are 5-5 as it is. And the Steelers, I mean, credit them. They keep winning. I mean, credit Mike Tomlin. I mean, they're getting the absolute most that they can out of whatever they are offensively, I
I bet
guess.
they beat the Browns Sunday, you know?
They have run the ball much better the last couple weeks, which I think is critical for them because I don't trust Kenny Pickett other than I guess Kenny Pickett's pretty good in the fourth quarter, you know. I mean, he's kind of like the anti-Ravens in that way, I guess, you know. He's bad for 3 quarters and then plays well in the fourth quarter. The Ravens, when they've had their issues, it's been the opposite. So, but I'm not a believer in Pittsburgh being a team that's going to win that many games to win the division. So I feel very confident about the Ravens winning this division at this point in time, given the circumstances of some of the other teams and where they are. But they have bigger goals in mind here, as they should, you know, given the state of the AFC overall at this point in time. So we'll see exactly how they can take advantage of these next 3 weeks or so with a lot of rest and you know, then get themselves ready for the final stretch.
As we sit on a Friday that feels like a Monday on a weekend that feels a little springish to some degree, and we have time off here, and we're doing figgy pudding and Thanksgiving. Lucas, I drink my Royal Farms coffee out of my Cole Roofing mug. I must say, the next time you and I get together, I will have spent quality time with Geddy Lee. So I just want to let you know that things are going to change
Nice.
around here for the holidays. Once I get together with Geddy, I'm sure my mojo is going to change here for Thanksgiving. You can find Luke out at Baltimore Luke. You can find both of us out at Baltimore Positive. All of the work we do is up on YouTube. It's out on Instagram. It's out on LinkedIn. Connect with us. Say hello to us. And we appreciate all the new subscribers to our YouTube channel and all the madness out on our Facebook WNST page as well. You can always email me, Ness at BaltimorePositive.com. Crab Cake Tours out on the road, presented by the Maryland Lottery in conjunction with Window Nation and Jiffy Lube Multicare. Tuesday, we are at Pappas. And make sure, if you're thinking about holiday gifts, use one of our sponsors. Pick your favorite crab cake and ship some crab cakes to somebody you love. That will make them happy because they can't get them wherever they are. Sucks for them. It's good for you. Make you a hero for the holidays. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Ravens football. Baltimore Positive. Stay with us.